Welcome to Market Plainly. Today, we're diving into another explainer in our Business Empire series. You know, it's wild to think about how a scrappy 1970s software startup basically became the inescapable digital infrastructure of the modern global economy. We're going to explore the journey of a company that is undeniably one of the most influential in modern history. Let's get right into it.
To really understand how Microsoft conquered the business world, we need to decode their five-pillar strategic blueprint. We'll be covering 1. The invisible digital empire, 2. The deal that changed everything, 3. The architecture of lock-in, 4. The antitrust reckoning, and finally 5. The cloud and AI era.
All right, let's start with pillar number 1, the invisible digital empire. So how exactly did a single company become the invisible digital plumbing of the entire global economy? It's a staggering reality when you think about it. Billions of people use their products every single day, and honestly, a lot of us don't even realize that Microsoft doesn't just sell software, they provide the foundational infrastructure that all modern business runs on. If you literally removed Microsoft from the equation tomorrow, the global economy wouldn't just slow down, it would grind to an absolute screeching halt. They're basically the invisible plumbing running through every corporate headquarters, hospital, and school on Earth. Now, strategically speaking, there are definitely different paths to dominance. Look at Apple, right? They built this premium, walled garden, highly focused on social identity and vertically integrated hardware. But Microsoft, they went a totally different route. They went for this capillary, horizontal penetration into absolutely every office globally. They didn't just want to be the shiny luxury device sitting in the boardroom. No, they wanted to be the actual operating system of the entire building. Which brings us to pillar 2, the deal that changed everything. Let's rewind a bit to the dawn of the personal computer revolution, back in the late 70s and early 80s. Historically, the timeline is pretty clear. Microsoft is founded in 1976 by Bill Gates and Paul Allen, who clearly saw a massive opportunity brewing. But the real game changer happens in 1980. They buy the rights to an operating system called 86DOS for just $50,000. And then, in what is arguably the smartest move in business history, they adapt it into MS-DOS and license it to IBM. But, and this is the absolute genius part, they refused to sell it to them outright. Instead, they kept the right to license that exact same software to other hardware clones. By leveraging that non-exclusive deal, they pulled off a masterful market dominance strategy. Instead of charging top dollar, they completely undercut competitors like CPM, offering their software for just a fraction of the cost, like $40 to $60. So while all these hardware manufacturers are fiercely competing, driving down their own prices, and essentially destroying their own profit margins, Microsoft is just sitting comfortably in the middle. They maintained this highly profitable software monopoly, capturing a staggering 90% of the PC market by 1983. Just incredible. Moving right along to pillar 3, the architecture of lock-in. You see, dominating the desktop just wasn't enough. They had to make sure that leaving Microsoft wasn't just expensive, but practically impossible. They needed to own the very language of business itself. A strategic analysis of the 1990s shows this absolute masterstroke, bundling the Windows operating system with the Microsoft Office suite. By combining Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, they created proprietary file formats. If a company wanted to send a spreadsheet or a contract to a client, both parties literally needed the exact same software to open it. Boom, mandatory global cooperation format. Suddenly, Microsoft software was strictly indispensable if you wanted to do business with, well, anyone. So how do you monetize that massive market share? Enter the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. Honestly, think of this less as a software purchase and more like a modern taxation system on corporate computing. It was deliberately designed to trap businesses in a rigid architecture of lock-in. A company commits to a platform across its entire enterprise, pays compulsory maintenance fees for updates, and then every single year they go through this true-up mechanism where they retroactively pay for any new users they've added as their company grew. This is the textbook definition of vendor lock-in. Through these mandatory software assurance and true-up processes, Microsoft ingeniously transformed what used to be a one-time software purchase into a perpetual, inescapable corporate expense. The sheer brilliance of it is that Microsoft's revenue automatically scales right alongside their clients' growth. You aren't just buying software, you're paying a continuous tribute just to keep the lights on and your business running. Plus, they knew they needed the folks actually building the future on their side. So by providing incredibly robust, highly secure, and often completely free tools like the .NET framework and Visual Studio, they drastically lowered the barrier of entry for internal corporate engineers. By making these tools the industry standard,
developers became one of Microsoft's greatest strategic assets. This practically guaranteed a long-term structural dependency on Microsoft's infrastructure from the ground up.
Of course, all this immense power leads us to Pillar 4, the antitrust reckoning.
Look, when a single company controls the absolute standard of business, regulators are going to start paying very, very close attention. Historically, these legal battles centered on accusations that Microsoft was illegally abusing its dominant market position to crush the competition. Back in 1998, the U.S. Department of Justice launched a massive antitrust lawsuit against them for unfairly bundling their Internet Explorer browser with Windows, basically to destroy competitors like Netscape. And later on, the European Union slapped them with a massive €561 million fine for similar noncompliance issues over browser choice. Yet, despite these intense legal battles and massive financial penalties, Microsoft survived. How? Well, because by that point, they had already established themselves as the inescapable central nervous system of corporate data centers. Through deep infrastructure integration using systems like Windows NT, businesses simply couldn't afford to rip Microsoft out of their servers, regardless of what the courts were saying. Their roots were just way too deep.
And that brings us to our final pillar, number 5, the cloud and AI era.
After surviving the antitrust era, Microsoft did enter a bit of a stagnant period. But that completely changed under the brilliant leadership of CEO Satya Nadella. He initiated this massive, aggressive cloud-first transformation. He saw that the future wasn't just sitting on the desktop, it was in the cloud, and it was in data. This huge shift really kicked off with the massive $26.2 billion acquisition of LinkedIn in 2016. With just that single stroke, Microsoft captured the global professional identity of the entire modern workforce.
Then, they swiftly followed that up with a $7.5 billion purchase of GitHub. Think about it. If LinkedIn gave them the business professionals, GitHub effectively gave them acquisition and control over the world's entire community of software programmers. They literally bought the very platforms where the future of software is being written.
All of this culminated in a monumental $13 billion strategic partnership with OpenAI. By stepping in super early and heavily funding the creators of ChatGPT, Microsoft made absolutely sure that all of OpenAI's revolutionary generative AI models are trained exclusively on Microsoft's Azure cloud servers. Now, the ultimate endgame here is crystal clear. With Microsoft 365 Copilot, they are monetizing this cutting-edge AI directly inside the exact tools everyone is already using, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, for an additional $30 a month per user. It is an absolute masterclass in strategy. You've got enterprise software, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence all reinforcing one another. It creates this impenetrable competitive moat that is incredibly difficult for any rival to even challenge. In fact, a lot of expert business analysts now argue that Microsoft has achieved something totally unprecedented. By controlling both the raw digital infrastructure and the advanced artificial intelligence being applied to it, Microsoft is operating at the absolute highest stage of systemic corporate control. They've essentially built a true cognitive monopoly over the business world. So, when we look back at this incredible journey, from a $50,000 piece of code to a multi-trillion-dollar empire, it's super clear that they didn't just win a market. They became the actual foundation upon which all modern business fundamentally depends. For sure, they stand as one of the most influential and powerful companies in human history.
Well, thank you so much for joining this explainer. The mechanics behind these corporate giants are just so fascinating once you really look under the hood. Now, make sure you catch our next explainer in the Business Empire series, where we're going to unpack the rise of Amazon. We're going to explore how a simple online bookstore completely rewrote the rules of e-commerce, global logistics, and cloud computing to become one of the most powerful businesses the world has ever seen. You absolutely won't want to miss it. Catch you next time.